Throughout history, there have been nations whose existence has shaped not only their own people but also the course of humanity, global balance, and progress. Russia is one such country. But what if one morning we woke up to find that Russia had vanished from the map as if it had never existed? What would the world lose? Which wars would never have occurred? Which inventions would have remained undiscovered? What music would never be heard? And which spacecraft would have never launched? To answer these questions, we must first take a brief journey through Russian history. For the value of a nation is defined by its past, by how it has influenced the world through its culture, inventions, literature, and even its wars. Russia's history begins in the 9th century with the Kievan Rus. Established in what is now Ukraine, Kievan Rus was the political and cultural center of the Eastern Slavs. In the 13th century, the Mongol invasion brought widespread devastation, but this collapse paved the way for Moscow's rise. In 1547, Ivan the Terrible declared himself Tsar of all Rus, marking the birth of the Tsardom of Russia. In the 18th century, reforms led by rulers like Peter the Great and Catherine the Great transformed Russia into an empire that opened its doors to the West. Then came the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, giving Russia a completely new identity, the Soviet Union. Communism not only reshaped Russia but influenced global politics and ideologies. During the Cold War, its nuclear rivalry with the United States seemed like a gamble with the fate of humanity. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, yet the newly formed Russian Federation remained a superpower through its military strength, natural resources, and cultural heritage. With such a deep-rooted history, Russia was more than a country, it was a symbol of civilization, a transformative force. Had Russia never existed, world history would have taken an entirely different path. Most notably, the outcome of World War II would likely have changed. The Soviet Union's contribution to halting Nazi Germany is often referred to by historians as a decisive factor. The German defeat at Stalingrad is considered a turning point in the war. Without Russia, Europe might have remained in the grip of Nazi ideology for decades. The Cold War era would never have happened. This would have drastically altered the development of nuclear weapons and the space race. Had Yuri Gagarin not become the first human in space in 1961, humanity's initial steps into the cosmos might have been delayed. The Soviet satellite Sputnik 1 was the first artificial object to orbit the Earth. Without this achievement, NASA's momentum would have taken longer to build. And what about literature? Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Chekhov, Pushkin. These names are the cornerstones of world literature. Without Russia, masterpieces like Crime and Punishment, War and Peace, or Uncle Vanya would never have been written. This would not just be a literary loss, but the loss of a profound journey into the depths of the human soul. Music, too, would be missing a vital part. Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake and the Nutcracker shaped not only Russian culture, but the entire classical music scene. These melodies have inspired generations, featuring in childhood memories, theaters, and films around the globe. The scientific world would have suffered significant setbacks as well. Russia's contributions to space technology, in particular, are immense. Soviet engineering, known for its cold precision and discipline, led the way in many fields. Rocket science, nuclear physics, and artificial intelligence advanced thanks to Russian scientists. Some of the energy systems, communication technologies, and military defense mechanisms we use today owe their existence directly or indirectly to Russian innovation. Russia holds the world's largest natural gas reserves and the second largest oil reserves. Without these resources, the global energy market would look entirely different. European nations would have had to craft completely different energy strategies. Geopolitical balances would shift and pressure on the Middle East would increase. Moreover, unique ecosystems like Siberia would not exist. This would not only mean a loss in biodiversity, but would also significantly affect the global climate. Siberia's permafrost plays a critical role in carbon absorption, making it essential to Earth's environmental balance. If Russia had never existed, the most profound shock would have been felt in global politics and geopolitical balance. Russia is not just a country that produced culture and history, it is the largest nation on Earth by landmass, the holder of the world's most extensive nuclear arsenal, and the most significant counterweight between East and West. So, what would the world look like if such a colossal power vanished from the map? NATO, founded in 1949, was primarily established in response to the Soviet threat. Had the Soviet Union never existed, NATO might never have been formed or would have emerged under a completely different framework. Throughout the 20th century, NATO's expansion, military exercises, and nuclear strategies were all designed with Russia in mind. The absence of Russia would have directly impacted Europe's defense policies. The United States would likely have reduced its military presence on the continent, and countries like Germany and France might have been forced to form their own defense alliances much earlier. Without NATO's eastward expansion, countries like Poland and the Baltic states would have been left to fend for themselves, creating a more fragmented and vulnerable security landscape in Europe. The most likely candidate to fill the geopolitical vacuum left by Russia would have been China, especially in Central Asia, the Far East, and the Arctic. China could have extended its military and economic influence much earlier. Today's Chinese Belt and Road Initiative remains constrained due to Russia's sphere of influence. But without Russia, China could have expanded much more assertively into the Turkic republics of Central Asia, the Caucasus, and even Eastern Europe. This shift would have accelerated US-China rivalry by 2 to 3 decades. The global power struggle we're witnessing today could have unfolded far earlier, and the world might have evolved into a unipolar or even China-centric structure instead of the current bipolar one. Since the Soviet era, Russia has exerted strong influence over Central Asia and the Caucasus. Countries like Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Kyrgyzstan maintain close ties with Moscow even after the USSR's collapse. Without Russia, these regions might have become battlegrounds of continuous rivalry between neighboring civilizations like China, Iran, and the Ottoman Empire. In the Caucasus, the situation would likely have been even more volatile. Countries such as Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, rather than maintaining a delicate balance between East and West, could have been drawn into major conflicts at an earlier stage. Russia's absence might have led to a complete collapse of political and military stability in the region. The Cold War-era doctrine of mutual assured destruction served as a kind of insurance policy against global war. The US and the Soviet Union possessed the power to destroy each other with their nuclear arsenals, a balance that discouraged both sides from engaging in open conflict. Without Russia, the United States would have faced no counterweight in the arms race, potentially emboldening it to adopt more aggressive foreign policies. The Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, these were all tempered by Russia's active involvement. Without its presence, these crises might either never have occurred or resulted in far more catastrophic outcomes. The continent that would have changed the most in Russia's absence is undoubtedly Europe. During the Cold War, Germany and France shaped their defense strategies under the protective shadow of the United States. Without Russia, these nations might have launched their own nuclear programs much earlier, and the political integration of the European Union could have advanced more rapidly. Germany, freed from the restraints of its post-World War II passive foreign policy, might have reasserted itself as a continental leader. Europe, less dependent on American influence, could have developed into a supercontinent driven by its own internal dynamics. Another region where Russia plays a critical role is the Middle East. In the Syrian civil war, Iran's relations with the West, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Moscow has frequently acted as a balancing force. Without this actor in the equation, the US would have emerged as the sole external power in the region, causing significant instability. Iran might have achieved nuclear capability much sooner. Israel would have had to recalibrate its security strategies, and Turkey might have been forced to completely reshape its regional policies. History is not shaped solely by wars and political borders. The existence of a nation gains meaning through cultural textures that touch the human soul, philosophical depth, and shared suffering. Russia is not merely a vast landmass or a nuclear weapons depot, it is also a civilization that has given birth to some of the most profound literary characters, the most melancholic melodies, and the most intense intellectual struggles in human history. So, what would humanity have lost if Russia had never existed? The depths of the human soul would be incomplete. Russian literature is not just a national heritage, it is a guide to understanding the human psyche. Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, Tolstoy's War and Peace, the graceful language of Nabokov, or the anguished prose of Solzhenitsyn. These works help us explore the inner world of mankind. Without Russia, some of the darkest, most honest, and most tragic narratives about human nature would never have been written. Dostoevsky's moral dilemmas are still debated in psychology and philosophy today. Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment is a reflection of the inner conflict we all carry within. The absence of such characters would leave a void not only in literature but in the understanding of human psychology itself. The spirit of art would be diminished. Ballet, classical music, theater, these are not just Russian achievements but gifts to the world. The notes of Tchaikovsky, the rhythms of Stravinsky, the stages of Prokofiev, these are not merely heard with the ears but felt with the soul. Had Russia never existed, these emotions might never have been experienced. Russian cinema, too, has contributed new forms of expression to global filmmaking. The metaphysical films of Tarkovsky, with their visually poetic scenes, challenge us to reflect on time and existence. Works like Mirror and Stalker transform cinema from mere entertainment into a language of being. Their absence would leave a noticeable gap in the intellectual evolution of cinema. The Russian language, with its fluid structure, vast vocabulary, and poetic tone, has influenced not only Slavic peoples but surrounding regions as well. It forms the foundation of Russian literature. If this language had never existed, it would mean the loss of not just an alphabet but an entire mode of thinking. One of the core concepts of Russian culture, patience shaped by suffering, has become a universal value. Molded by harsh climates, historical struggles, and oppressive regimes, this societal endurance has served as a model of resilience for all of humanity. Russia's history is also a testament to how people resist oppression. From uprisings against Tsarist tyranny to the Bolshevik Revolution to the survival of art, literature, and humor during Stalin's reign, Russia has shown how humanity can endure in the face of repression. This absence would not just be physical, it would be a moral and philosophical void. Without Russia's culture of resistance, it would be far more difficult to understand or confront some of the world's harshest realities. Works like Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago shed light on the darkness of totalitarian regimes and taught the world how dangerous it is to forget. Russia's role in global history is not only cultural but civilizational. Standing as a bridge, not a wall, between East and West, Russia has at times maintained balance and at others led the world into conflict. But this balance has left a vital lesson for humanity. Power is not sustained by weapons alone, but also by culture, knowledge, and memory. Conclusion: an incomplete world. Had Russia never existed, the world might have been simpler, perhaps less conflicted, but also more soulless and superficial. Humanity would be unable to fully grasp the extremes of both virtue and vice, unable to understand the grandeur of heroism or the depth of tragedy. Russia, through its existence, has built more than a geography, it has built a soul. Its absence would leave a void in our understanding of depth, contradiction, and struggle, the very essence of being human. And this absence would not be measured in numbers or maps, but in poetry, novels, a violin solo, or the tears of a mother mourning her son at a soldier's grave. The question, what if Russia never existed, is really a question of what might humanity lose? And the answer is clear: a great deal. Perhaps everything.